Good day, students. Dr. Lee Jones here with you. Let's start our discussion in this class called Politics as Global Issues. Let's start our discussion with defining our terms. We're doing something this semester called descriptive political science. Descriptive political science means that we are concerned with the definition of terms. If we can define terms, then we can really get a sense of what we're talking about as we analyze politics. Please remember that words are just concepts used to understand the nature of the world that we live in. So if we can define our terms, then we can conquer those terms. We can understand them. And once we conquer those terms, then we can conquer our reality. And if you can conquer your reality by defining your terms, then you can change your reality. So the point here is to ask for, this is chapter 1, we want to get into an understanding of what is politics, right? The class is called Politics and Global Issues. Let's define politics, then let's define global issues. In order to define politics, the first thing we have to work towards is a definition of political science. And to help us define political science, let's turn our attention to the sociologist named Max Weber, the German sociologist Max Weber. We're saying that politics is about choice. There are some dimensions to this politics, right? There's some dimensions to the analysis of power. So we're saying that politics is about choice, politics is about change, politics is about space, but fundamentally, and perhaps finally, politics is about power, where power is the ability to influence the choices made by others, the ability to control space. Let's look at some of the dimensions of politics. We're saying that politics is about choice. When we talk about political choices, we are analyzing how common decisions are made. We say that an individual question, now this is an analysis that comes from the sociologist C. Wright Mills's famous book called The Sociological Imagination. We're saying that individual questions become societal issues that then require a common policy. Now, let's take it back to the murder at the hands of the police by Michael Brown, right? You remember that circumstance. Please Google it if you're not familiar, right? And so why the individual question is that Michael Brown was shot in an altercation with the police, shot dead. And his body was left to rot in the sun, to the wails of his mother, to the anguish of his community for hours and hours until services arrived to retrieve that young man's body off the street. So now, the individual question, the individual circumstance is that Michael Brown was shot. Is that just his problem? It is definitely his problem. He was sent to the ancestral realm. That's a problem for his family. But is that the end of it? How does the individual circumstance of Michael Brown being killed, how does that translate into a societal issue? That's because people ask questions. Look at how that young man was shot. I too used to be a young man. If he was shot like that, how might it be possible that I, or people like me, or people like my son might be shot, right? And then if you have a societal issue, the question is, how can I and people like myself and Michael Brown and my son not get shot by the police? Then the question becomes, what's someone who is there to do something about it, right? Let's do it again. Let's say, for example, I look in my pocket and I don't have any money. That's a personal problem for myself. I don't have any money. But then look in your pocket. What if you don't have any money? Look at your friend's pocket. What if they don't have any money? Look at the people in your community. What if they don't have any money? Then, right, so then you see something happening. The personal situation of mine not having any money is translated to the society at large, that the society is mired by the lack of money or mired by poverty. And so if the individual circumstance is translated into a societal issue, then there's an entity out there that's supposed to address societal issues. So the common policy is something that the government provides. Okay, so at the heart of the political effort is at the heart of politics is the effort to manipulate the material world, to move from the individual to the societal and thus requiring a common policy. That's what we mean by the politics of choice. We're saying that political questions challenge the nature of social reality. We're saying that politics influences individual actions, it influences group choices, and ultimately it influences governmental or the development of common policies. So politics is about choice. Politics is also about change. In a one-word answer, even before you read the whole of this slide, in a one-word answer, the politics of change involves elections. When we say the politics of change, we are acknowledging that the political world does not just sit in one place, right? The political world is always changing. It's always in action. It's always in a state of transition. That the political world involves tension. It involves conflict, especially this week, right? And it involves change. Okay, so the change that we're talking about fundamentally is about the rise and fall of governments, the rise and fall of individual elected officials, how people come into office, what they do while they're in office, and then the effort to get those people out of office so that someone new comes in. So the elections involve the official institutions of government intersecting with the citizens or intersecting with the voters. Official institutions supposedly have rules and regulations, policies and laws that they follow. These rules and regulations influence the way that they produce policies. We just covered that. And so it influences the way they interact with the citizenry at large. So when we extend the thought, if the politics of change involves elections, then the politics of change is ultimately about the nature of democracy, how the people interact with the government, how the governed interact with the governors. Okay, so politics is about choice, politics is about change, and politics then is about space. We're saying that the politics of space, we're saying that space is the area within which, the area between which, the area where your politics occurs. Hopefully you can see my hands. Let's say this is your political circumference. This is your political circumference, right? Your effort as a politicized student, as a politicized human being, as a citizen of a polity, your effort is to try to do things to increase the political circumference within which you act. So what's one of the things you do to increase your political circumference? You're going to vote. That's going to increase the amount of political power you're able to assert in the world. You're going to vote. What else will you do? You're going to read politics. You're going to be politically aware. You're going to be politically active. You're going to save your money, not just be a consumer. You're going to be a wise supporter. You're going to be a supporter of businesses that operate and so in turn support your community. When you do these things, you are creating, you are maximizing your political circumference. You are growing the space within which your politics occurs. Now let's take this point in mind. Keep this point in mind. The word government literally means to control. Part of the point of the government, part of the end goal of the government is to control you. So it's not too far to say that governments exist in a particular form to try to limit the political circumference within which you act. What's some of the things that the current administration is engaged in, right? One of the things that the government does to limit your political circumference is engage in hundreds of thousands of stop and frisk police activity, right? Police brutality, choking people to death in the middle of the street, right? Barging into people's houses, into EMTs' houses, Breonna Taylor, and just shooting them in their bed. You know, those kind of things, those serve to limit your political space, fascist style policing. Warrantless electronic surveillance of all electronic communication, these type of things limit your political space. Efforts to limit the ability of people to vote, right? Voter ID laws, these things all serve to limit your political space. You're looking to increase your political space. The government is looking to decrease your political space. You're going to push out and try to expand. The government is going to push in and try to limit. So the effort, when we talk about the politics of space, what I'm hoping to get across to you is just as your lungs expand and contract, and that keeps you alive. The polity, the state is kept alive by the interaction between the citizenry and the government, the push and pull of politics. That's what we mean. When we say the politics of space, we are talking about the dual characteristics. This is the point on the test. We're talking about the dual characteristics of voice, where this is called interest articulation, where you say what you want the government to either do for you or to stop doing to you, how you use your political voice. And then your voice has to be matched with agency. Not only do you have to say what you want, but you have to engage political agency. You have to go out there, be politically active so that you can go get the government. If you want the government to stop doing something to you, you have to make it. If you want the government to do something for you, you have to make it do so. The politics of space then involves the dual characteristics of voice and agency. Now, in line with the politics of space, we're saying that states are the defining political actor that we're going to analyze throughout this class, the activities of the state, right? And so people live in spaces that are called states, and these states have definite characteristics. We can return again to Max Weber's 1918 essay, Politics as Vocation, and we allow him to tell us what are the 4 defining characteristics of the state. And number 1, the first thing we have to do is know where this thing begins and where this thing ends. What are the boundaries? So 1, a state has a defined set of territorial boundaries. Secondly, inside those boundaries, we have to know how political choices are made, who makes the rules, who has the legitimate use of violence. And so the second defining characteristic is that the official institutions enjoy a monopoly on rulemaking. Official institutions monopolize rulemaking. Inside this entity that has a defined set of territorial boundaries within which the official institutions enjoy a monopoly on rulemaking, you have to be able to say how you're going to make people follow those rules. Remember, the word government literally means to control. So the third defining characteristic of the state is that official institutions control the means of coercion, where the word coerce means to force. And so that means that states use power. And then the fourth defining characteristic of this entity that operates in a defined territorial set of boundaries, where the official institutions enjoy a monopoly on rulemaking, where that monopoly on rulemaking is backed up by the threat of violence or the means of coercion. This entity has to, and this is the fourth characteristic, be internationally sovereign. It has to exist in the world of state actors in an independent fashion. All right, so those are the 4 defining characteristics of the state, according to Max Weber: a defined set of territorial boundaries, a monopoly on rulemaking, control over the means of coercion, and international sovereignty. So essentially where we're going here in chapter 1, in this introduction to the class, we're saying that politics is about power. We're saying that power is about the ability to influence choice. And then later in the class, we'll say that those choices that matter are those that deal with the allocation of scarce resources. So politics is always about the exercise of power by one group or one person over another group or another person. Power is the ability to influence choice, and the power is the means by which change is made. Power controls space. Power either limits or causes the expansion of one's political space. Power is the ability of one person or group to cause others to do what they want done. That's what we mean by this. We're saying that politics then is about choice. It's about change. It's about space. Politics is about power. So this class is called Politics and Global Issues. So politics and global issues. We have defined what politics is. Let's offer in brief form, what are global issues? Globalization is the process of the increasing interconnectedness between people, between groups, between governments, between economies, between corporations. Globalization is about the interconnectedness of the various forces that are operating on planet Earth. My place of birth, born to be the sole controller of the universe, planet Earth, right? So globalization, global issues acknowledges that the political, economic, cultural, and social events that occur around the world become more and more connected as time moves forward. By political, as an example, the United States, that is led currently by President Donald Trump, is the policeman of planet Earth. The United States has aircraft carrier battle groups on watch in all the seas of the earth. The United States has a military presence in 91% of planet Earth. By way of economic globalization, you look at the things that you have. Look at the goods that you use, right? Look at where the things are made, and you'll find that there's a certain amount of globalization. Here is my cell phone. When you look at the components of a cell phone, that is just a good example. Cobalt, all the other minerals inside this thing. This thing is a Samsung. It might be sold by a Korean corporation inside the United States, but it's absolutely composed of minerals and such that are pulled out of the earth in Africa. That's what we mean by economic globalization. Cultural globalization can just be seen in your popular culture, where hip hop music, right, is seen as the music for young people around the world, right? Young people around planet Earth are expressing themselves through rhyme, through hip hop, right? And then by social connections, you know that people are transitory. To be human means that you're going to, you're going to move around, you're going to engage in transportation. And so when something happens, you're going to see it affect multiple places on planet Earth. I'm using on my slide here the example of the Ebola outbreak, but I guess more current would be the current, COVID-19, the coronavirus. It jumps off in one particular country, and then it's not long where every country on planet Earth is affected. So globalization then is concerned with the interconnectedness between people of the planet. And then part of our goal is to understand that the state is the prime mover in global issues. That's a test question, that the state is the prime mover in global issues. So I'm getting ready to conclude this lecture. Please walk through the rest of these slides, right? We're talking about having a conversation with Max Weber, and we're asking him certain questions, and then he's going to give us some answers. Here we ask Weber, what is the state? He tells us that the state is a specific type of political organization where official institutions and society interact through the use of power. Let's pause right there. We just asked Weber, what is the state? He said it's a political organization. If it's a political organization, what in fact is being organized? Politics. And what's politics? Power. So a state is an organization that is a specific type of entity that organizes power. We can ask Weber, who is the state? We ask Weber, who are the citizens? What's the difference between a citizen and a mere member of the public? We can ask Weber, what is the state? What is the government? We can ask Weber, who is the government? And then just to conclude our discussion, I wanted you to pay attention to just some factoids. Pause the recording or just go to the slides and read through some of this and think about, what the world looks like. A second ago, I was quoting the best rapper in history, Rakim, right? Rakim, on that record called The Ghetto, he says, planet Earth, my place of birth, born to be the sole controller of the universe, besides the part of the map I hit first. Anyway, what Rakim is saying here, and what we want to say, is that we have to understand the nature of human beings, right? We want to know just some bargain basement details about where people live, right? There's 1.2 billion people in Africa. Europe has a good 700, 800 million people living in it. The United States has 340 million people living in it. Not like I'm going to put these numbers on the test, but just some things we want you to know, that there's 7 billion people on planet Earth, and those people are organized into roughly 191, 195 planets, 195 countries on planet Earth. You can look at some details on life expectancy, how people are organized by religion, how literacy occurs, and then pay attention to these slides, right? But here, I want to focus your attention on the economic connections that are occurring. These, let's say the large circles, let me show it to you like this, right? These large circles indicate places where corporations have their home bases. The larger the circle, the more corporations that are operating inside that city, right? And though these lines then connect the home corporation to places around the earth where there are subsidiary corporations located. So for example, here is Tokyo, right? I'm circling Tokyo. Tokyo has corporations that are have subsidiaries. Tokyo is the home base for corporations that have subsidiaries all the way down here through Australia, all the way here into parts in South America. And absolutely, the darker the line, the more subsidiaries, absolutely has subsidiaries in Europe and the United States. Now, I use this map to show you where is capitalism located? Where are the hubs for capitalism? We see that the hubs for capitalism, are here in Europe. We see the hub for capitalism is here, not just in the United States, but on the East Coast of the United States, not neglecting what's happening out here in California. And then we can see we are, right, and then also we see that Japan is a center of, and Beijing is the center of capitalism, worldwide capitalism. But then we also see what areas are largely avoided, skipped over, neglected, which areas are out of play in world capitalism. Not to say that they have no role to play, right? We know that developing countries are the sources for the mineral wealth, the labor wealth, the resource wealth that feeds global capitalism. But in terms of being the focal points for large-scale transnational corporations and their subsidiaries, look at the paucity of action, like the lack of home corporations throughout larger Asia. Look at how Africa is a smaller player in world capitalism. And then look at how entire sections of South America are neglected. So I use this map just to show you some details about global capitalism in a graphic sense. All right, so let's say that this is the conclusion of our discussion of chapter 1. Please go forward and read through this textbook for chapter 1, and then read through the slides. This is the material that'll be on the test. Thank you for paying attention to this discussion. Peace and hair grease.